So I'm continuing to work on my e-voting application, and I'm running into some unexpected problems with Webpacker. For some reason, this Babel plugin syntax service isn't loading. It's some sort of a node problem. I don't know exactly what it is, but my styles are really messed up on the page that I'm trying to look at. So given that Webpacker is officially dead now in the Rails ecosystem, I figure maybe it's time to just upgrade this application to Rails 7 and we'll start using ESBuild instead of Webpacker. And I'll show you how to do that conversion process and how to import your style sheets into your JavaScript deliverable. So we'll start this off by getting rid of, well, actually, we'll start this off by upgrading to Rails 7, and we'll go from there. Okay, now we can get rid of Webpacker, and let's go ahead and replace that with JS bundling Rails. So now the next step that we got to do is run the Rails task JavaScript install ESBuild. Alright, so remember now, ESBuild, when we're using this pipeline, ESBuild will take our JavaScripts from this directory. ESBuild is going to compile this application.js file, put it into the asset pipeline, which is used by Sprockets, and then that's going to end up in our public directory, which is here. And so that means that in our layouts, for example, application layout, instead of using the pat tag, we're going to be using the include tag, which is for the asset pipeline. So after we ran the JS bundler setup task, take note of this message presented here telling us to add this command to our package.json file scripts. This is the command to actually run the JavaScript tool ESBuild, which does the JavaScript transpiling and bundling into a single deliverable file. So let's go ahead and take a look at our package.json file. Just to give you a hypothetical demonstration of what this ESBuild command does, let's try to create a Typescript file and we'll convert it, we'll output that as a JavaScript file. So we'll hit our demo.ts. Okay, so let's convert this TypeScript into JS using ESBuild. But first we have to install ESBuild by using npm. So now that ESBuild has been installed, as you can see by the existence of the folder there, we go ahead and run the ESBuild command through yarn. Okay, it looks like I forgot a flag there on how to specify the out file. There, so the output to demo.js. Alright, so let's take a look at demo.js. Demo.ts turned into demo.js. And there you go. ESBuild converted this TypeScript file into demo.js. So yeah, that's exactly, that's pretty much what's going on with this command here. Now, a fancier way you could do this, if you have like a lot of settings, you don't have to, you could have this run a build script configuration file, which would look something like this. You could have a JavaScript file that ESBuild will read and now tell it how to run the build. You're essentially making, taking all those command line options and making something like a Docker compose, but in a JSON sort of looking format. Well, this is actually executable JavaScript, so let's go ahead and make that. So I'm going to make a file called build.js. Alright, so here, as you can see, let's take this. So instead of ESBuild, we're going to change this command to node build.js. So we're going to have node run this build.js file, and this ESBuild statement here is going to essentially do everything that this command would have done. We have the bundle true, we have it creating a source map, and we also have the outer going to assets builds. And I've also used this configuration to make a watcher so that we could just run this in a window and it'll automatically watch the entry points directory for any change for any changes as making them in the code. So now let's get rid of this stuff from our application packs, and we'll move it over to the new application.js file. Actually, for this application, since it's a rather simple application where we only care about our styles, all we have to do is take our bootstrap and our style sheet, and then we could have ESBuild create our styles through the JavaScript file and embed it in the JavaScript. So let's just take this stuff, and we're not using all this other stuff, so we could just go ahead and delete this file. In fact, the whole packs directory, because we're not using Webpacker anymore. Now, one more important detail that we have to do is we need to tell ESBuild to be able to interpret these SCSS files. There's a particular loader for that. It could handle SCSS, but for Sass, we have to use this esbuild-sass-plugin. So we're just going to install that, and then we're going to add this to this plugin here. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I got that installed in our node modules. Now we got to go ahead and add that to our build.js. So the Sass should be able to compile now. Let's go ahead and boot our Rails server and our ESBuild watcher, and we'll give that a try. So I'm running the Rails server, but we have to have ESBuild running in a separate window. Now, you could use Foreman to do that. So the JS bundler, it gives you this procfile.dev, which you could use to run both the Rails server and the watch server at the same time. And by the way, I think this is a different type of watch than the one that comes with ESBuild. The one that we're using here, I think, is built up into ESBuild. But if you run it this way, then if you use binding.pry in your Rails code, you won't be able to access the breakpoint because it's not an interactive terminal session. So I like to run them in separate windows. So we're going to do it that way instead of making use of this. Let's see, and our yarn command was build. Oh, I don't think we have one of our package.json settings correctly. Follow that warning right here. We'll see if that works. All right, looks like the watcher is working. So this watching here is the message that we had it say right here, this watching right here. So if we make a change to this application.js, oh, look at that, build succeeded automatically. So let's bring up our application again, and let's try to reload this file, the one that I was having trouble with my style sheets loading, and we'll see if the styles load. Oh, see, I have a pack tag that I got to change to the include tag. Now remember, we can get rid of the style sheet pack tag because we're not using the application style sheets. We're just we're embedding it inside of the JavaScript in the way that we're doing it through ESBuild. There we go. And now we've got our style sheet loading as expected. Okay, so I just discovered a new problem here. Watch what happens when we try to pre-compile our assets. And what this rake test does is it takes the sprockets. Let me show you. It takes this sprockets thing from builds, whatever your JS file is here, and then moves it into the public directory so that it could be served as a static file along with your web page. And what it'll do is it'll take whatever it's the contents of this is and minify it. But when we run the task, it runs our ESBuild script, but along with that, it also runs our watcher. So we're going to have to figure out a way around this. All right, so after putting a little bit of thought into this, here's the solution I came up with. I decided that I'm going to split our script into two different tasks here. We actually have two ways of writing the script. Runs off the same JS file to configure ESBuild that we're using, but one of them I added a watch option to, and you'll see exactly how that plays into the way that this build works. So if I want to do a build like through the Rails asset compiler, which is the task that automatically runs when you do rake precompile assets, it'll run build.js without the watch option. But for watch, I have this flag here, watch specified, and let me show you what that does. So because this is a pure JavaScript file, when it runs, it'll look for this, it'll slice up the params, and if watch is among those params, then it'll set the watch variable, and then it will set the watch value that goes into the build instruction accordingly here. So we've got if watch is true, it'll set up the callback for on rebuild, and then it has this this method that passes or this function, this JavaScript function here that it passes in there, which is our watcher. If there's no watch, then it just sets it to false. And if we go into the source code for ESBuild, we'll see that watch, it's either expecting a callback or a Boolean value. So let's look here at the code in ESBuild lib. This is main.js, and here in the middle of the file, this is where it's parsing out the flags for the watch right here. And as you can see, if it's a Boolean type, it does a certain thing with it, but otherwise it's looking for certain flags here, certain options that you could use and configure. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to mention. So let's demonstrate this, and then watch the watch param going into it gets put here. So I'm going to show you how this works in practice. So we'll do yarn run build, and it's going to build without the watch. It just built our JavaScript assets, and then we could look at them. The out directory would have been up here. So it would have generated this application JS file here, and as you see when we look in there, that all the style sheet information is in this as well. The CSS gets loaded. There's all that stuff. And by the way, so this is going to be minified by sprockets, and it's going to be put into the public directory when you run the application, when you do rake assets precompile. But that would be the next step in rake assets precompile. Now let's run with the watcher. So I do run build watch, and this triggers the one with the watch flag on it. And here we go. It's watching, and then it runs regular watcher. So let's go back to our application.js file. And then now that should be caught. There you go. It rebuilt the application. And then also, now if we run rake assets precompile, it should build without giving us any issue. And there we go. It builds. It made our assets that went into public assets, and it's not hanging anymore with that watch command running out there. Well, I hope this video was helpful in showing you how to use ESBuild in your Rails application and get embedded style sheets. If you thought this was useful, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, as I like making Ruby on Rails content. I think this new way of developing full stack is great, and I want to help show you how to do it. So I'll see you in the next video.